zero tolerance for corruption. This is the DA difference. The next broadcast will start shortly. Follow us on social media for the latest in news and politics in South Africa. Like and follow our page on Facebook. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram and Twitter. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss out on anything. Be part of the conversation. Tell us what you think in the comment section. And please like and share our videos with your friends and family. The next broadcast will start shortly. If you care about South Africa and want to make a positive difference, then join the DA. Visit our website at da.org.za for more information. Find out who represents you in your ward and district and who are the DA mayors working for you in your town or city, and which MPs represent you and your causes in Parliament. On our website, you can learn more about our latest campaigns and how you can get involved. Join the Democratic Alliance to rescue South Africa. Become an activist, become a councillor, become a member of Parliament if you care about South Africa. Please visit donate.da.org.za. Donate to a cause you believe in. Donate to make a difference. Did you know the best run municipalities in South Africa are all governed by the DA? DA mayors are working hard to protect residents from national government failures by getting the basics right, delivering better services, and having zero tolerance for corruption. This is the DA difference. The next broadcast will start shortly. Follow us on social media for the latest in news and politics in South Africa. Like and follow our page on Facebook. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram and Twitter. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss out on anything. Be part of the conversation. Tell us what you think in the comment section. And please like and share our videos with your friends and family. The next broadcast will start shortly. If you care about South Africa and want to make a positive difference, then join the DA. Visit our website at da.org.za for more information. Find out who represents you in your ward and district and who are the DA mayors working for you in your town or city, and which MPs represent you and your causes in Parliament. On our website, you can learn more about our latest campaigns and how you can get involved. Join the Democratic Alliance to rescue South Africa. Become an activist, become a councillor, become a member of Parliament if you care about South Africa. Please visit donate.da.org.za. Donate to a cause you believe in. Donate to make a difference. Let's rescue South Africa. Join the DA, because the DA gets things done.
Over 1,400 children starved to death in South Africa since 2023. Over 3 million people have given up on looking for jobs. All this while 120 billion rand has been flushed down the drain by government entities in just 5 years. Today, the ANC wants to tax you more. My name is Mpiti, and today we discuss the elephant in the room, the ANC's VAT budget. WTF, where is the funding? Let me know what you think in the comment section. Like and share this broadcast and keep the conversation going using the hashtag #NoToVATIncrease. In studio, I'm joined by Dr. Mark Burke, the DA spokesperson on finance, Mam Bridget Masangu, DA spokesperson on social development, Baxolile Nodada, DA deputy chief whip, Tammy Jackson, our resident voice, and on Zoom we have the deputy chairperson of the DA Federal Council, the DA's very own Asho Serpin. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for joining us today, and I think it's a very important conversation that we need to have. Now, yesterday, the Minister of Finance delivered the budget speech, the very first one where there is no single party that holds a majority in Parliament. How do you guys feel?
Well, I think that very last word that you said about being there no party that is holding the majority, I don't think the ANC knows this, or I don't think the ANC actually remembers it when it starts doing the work that they're supposed to do.
Well, I think that the ANC has essentially forgot that they no longer hold a supermajority in Parliament. And that is what is so significant about this entire process, is that in the past we have become so accustomed to the ANC majority in Parliament rubber stamping whichever legislation they bring to Parliament and whichever budget they decide to pass. We are now in a completely different era where everything is now up for debate, nothing is set in stone, and I ultimately think that this is very healthy for our democracy. But in typical ANC style yesterday, they essentially delivered the message to the people of South Africa, and that message was, let them eat cake.
Sure. I mean, it's really crazy times. And I think the point that there's no single party now that has a majority. So people need to come around the table. Bex, the budget speech is probably one of the most important events on the parliamentary calendar.
Look, there's a saying that says you might not be interested in politics, but politics is interested in you. And I think it's important for South Africans to take a full interest in the budget process in Parliament, because you cannot run a country without money. The reason why it's an important part of the calendar is because that's where we deliberate whether the departments will get enough money so that you have better schooling, where the hospitals can be fixed, where the provinces will be able to be allocated money enough that is sufficient to build the necessary roads and other service delivery that they need to provide. And most importantly for municipalities, to also get funding to make sure that they service their residents. You know, people still drink water with animals till this day. You know, some people still have, potholes in the roads. Some don't even have access to roads at all. So the budget process in itself in Parliament is to scrutinize whether the government has prioritized the things that affect South Africans the most. And more importantly, does the budget contribute to our agenda of economic growth and jobs, considering that millions of South Africans are unemployed and depend on us to make the right decisions. And when it comes to Parliament, it's for us to scrutinize as representatives of the people that play an oversight in that role. So it affects all South Africans, and that's why it's such an important process, and no party can now bulldoze their own policies that could be destructive to the people of South Africa. And that's why it's an important part of the calendar.
Now, Beck, speaking about the importance of the parliamentary calendar, yesterday I had an opportunity to speak to the DA federal leader, John Steenhuisen, just after the budget speech. Let's take a look.
We're not in a position to support the budget in its current form. We don't believe this budget speaks to the growth agenda in South Africa, and it doesn't make some of the bold decisions that we need to be able to move the country forward. And so it's very, very important that people understand that you cannot simply pass a 1% cumulative VAT increase onto the people of South Africa, massively ramping up the cost of living, massively increasing the price of transport and other foodstuffs, without at the same time putting on the table some very, very clear issues that you could grow the economy with and create jobs. The Democratic Alliance joined government to be part of the job creation and economic growth agenda. We do not believe that at this stage and in its current form, this budget speaks to that. We're very happy to continue the negotiations and work towards when the instruments have to be tabled. But in its current form, this budget only has 39% of the support in the House, and it's up to the Finance Minister now explain how he intends to get this budget over the line. I would have thought you come to the Parliament with a budget that is locked away with its own majority. This budget doesn't have that.
Now, that's John there speaking about why the DA joined government on the agenda of economic growth and jobs. Now, Mark, I want to maybe just take us a little bit back. What are some of the key takeaways from this budget speech yesterday?
Well, I think the first thing to say is this was more like a pseudo-budget than an actual budget, primarily because it does not have majority support in Parliament. And the ANC knew this when they sent their Minister of Finance to give that address. Some of the reasons we're opposed to this is even though the ANC has climbed down from a 2% VAT hike, they're still proposing a 1% VAT hike split over 2 years. And at the same time, we haven't seen an increase in areas that we need to see it. There are some positives. They're talking finally about a spending review, although in very undefined terms. And they're talking still about a ghost audit of employees. And we know at PRASA, 10% of their workforce turned out not to exist. So we need to do this across government.
Mm-hmm. Now, Asho, I just, as we're listening to John, he was speaking about economic growth and jobs, but I wanted to find out maybe from you, how does the ANC's VAT hike derail this economic growth and jobs that John is speaking about?
Yeah, so the ANC VAT budget, as we see it, doesn't resolve the fundamental problems in the economy. It's business as usual, and business as usual is not good enough. Unemployment has gone up from 22% to 33% in the last 15 years or so. So the same policy agenda that they've been pursuing, they cannot now try to pursue when they only have 39.75% of the seats in Parliament. The South African electorate kicked them out for a reason, and they can't expect us to be a rubber stamp. We want those reforms. We want growth. We want people to get into jobs. We want to lower the cost of living. The DA's manifesto is very clear that we will lower the cost of living. This budget raises the cost of living, and it does so in a way that passes the cost of this on to poor and middle-class families, and it is really fundamentally unfair to every single South African that we have now got to pay the price for the ANC's failed policies of the last 15 years. There's a simple reality. We can't take more money out of the economy and out of the tax system to try to make South Africans wealthy and more prosperous. That's never going to work. We need to get things moving on the economy. And we've proposed a whole range of measures. I'm sure we'll get into the discussion on those measures. But until they agree to those, we're going to be having this budget fight every single year. And so there's no time to waste. And we've had this GNU now for 8 months. And the ANC need to learn that they don't govern alone. And that's what I think they need to learn so that they don't bring budgets that shift hardship onto the ordinary South Africans, while, for example, giving the public service an above-inflation salary increase. It's going to cost the fiscus, the taxpayer, 7 billion rand to pay above-inflation increases. That's far more than they're increasing the social grants above inflation, for example. It's 7 times more, in fact. So when you look at those sorts of things, it's not a pro-poor budget, it's a pro-poverty budget.
Definitely. And I mean, Ash, I saw a very ridiculous tweet yesterday by Fikile Mbalula, who put up the following on X, on his X account. It says, Steenhuisen was so clear. Stop implementing transformative laws if you want us to support the budget. This is what their objection is about. Not a concern on the poor. This is crazy stuff. Tammy, what do you think about that ridiculous tweet?
Well, first of all, we need to remember who Fikile Mbalula actually is, okay? This is the same person who went to the Free State and told the people of that province that although they may not have water, they should at least be grateful that they have taps in their yard delivered by the ANC. This is also the same man who had no shame being chauffeured into a poverty-stricken township in a Mercedes-Benz that probably cost the taxpayer 3 million rand. This is also the same man who has earned more Mampara of the Week titles than what Claudia Motswaneng could even aspire to. And so the truth of the matter is that when you have continuously shown yourself to be absolutely clueless, out of touch with reality, and in denial about the real material conditions of South Africa, then you have absolutely no business speaking about the poor or even pretending to care about them. Now, the reality is this. South Africans have no longer bought into this false narrative that the DA is an anti-poor party. If we're going to be quite honest, that narrative has quite frankly reached its expiry date, and it's lame. Yeah. It's lame. Yeah. And so the reality is that the DA was the only party within the GNU that actually put up an aggressive fight against an ANC imposed or almost imposed 2% VAT increase. Anything else being claimed by ANC appendages inside the GNU, such as the Good Party and like Fikile Mbalula, is completely disingenuous, and it's being done out of panic.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely true. I think the one thing that's angering about a tweet like that, for somebody who works in the most deep rural parts of our country that comes from there, we don't get told about poverty on Twitter. I mean, half of the people that live where I live don't even have Twitter, for that matter. What they're concerned about is, am I able to put bread on the table for my children?
Yes.
I mean, there's a young lady, Bonge Gabuso, who had to mix rat poison in Butterworth with their last bit of food to poison her children because she could not watch them suffer because she can't provide food for them anymore. And she killed her children and herself. Now, for somebody to try and reduce us fighting the VAT increase to a nonsensical tweet about transformative policies is absurd. In fact, you are out of touch with reality. What South Africans are concerned about that we are fighting against as a DA is to make sure that the ANC does not increase VAT that will put a boot on the neck of the poor. We need to make sure that we focus on economic growth and jobs so that we're able to lift people out of poverty. What they want to hear from us is, how are you going to create jobs for us and make the cost of living less? Because we can't afford to put meals on the table for our children. We can't afford the rising cost of transport. We can't afford the rising cost of the basic essentials that we need to get. Now we've got the ANC for the past 30 years that has basically been stealing from the poor. And now they want us to be able to pay the price and the poor people of this country to pay the price for their own corruption and their own incompetence. We'll never accept that as the DA because we are the vanguard, by the way, of the poor. And we're the vanguard of those that don't take anywhere. The middle class, the young people that are employed today, the young families that are trying to start a job in the lower middle class have got debt on their necks. And you want to impose your corruption on them, yet they're trying to lift their families out of poverty, pay bonds, pay their own costs. We cannot accept that. And it must be made clear to the ANC that we will never accept that as a DA. We will continue to fight for South Africans to be lifted out of poverty.
Yes. But also, Loyolo, if I could just add to that, there's a key term within Mbalula's tweet where he talks about transformative laws. We need to ask ourselves, which transformative laws in the last 30 years that the ANC has passed and implemented has actually led South Africans out of poverty? The reality is that more South Africans today are living under the breadline more than ever before. And all of this has taken place under the ANC's watch. Another question that I pose to Mr. Mbalula is, if you're referring to transformative laws, is it the same transformative laws that has brought unemployment up from 22% to almost 50% in this country? If so, explain that to the people of South Africa.
Yeah, and Ma'am Bridget, I want to really stay on this fight because it's an important fight for the most vulnerable people in our country.
Yes, a tweet like that, Loyolo and colleagues, is actually an insult to the poor people. That VAT budget that was delivered yesterday, speech, actually is saying to the poor people, you are going to pay more for the food that you are not affording now. So the increase in food prices is going up and up and up. When the minister yesterday announced that there is going to be an increase in the older persons grants and things like that, it means that those grants are coming in one hand and they are going out in the other. Because just recently, I was in Tembisa, where we were looking at, we were oversighting this changing of cards from gold cards to black cards and things like that. And then an elderly lady came to me and said, "You said last year that you are going to rescue South Africa. What have you done?" At the time, I was able to say what my colleagues in the executive have done. I was able to say the strides that they have made in making sure that things are getting better so that we can have growth and jobs. But after this budget, if that lady were to say to me, "So Bridget, how's that rescuing South Africa going at the moment?" What would I say to them? Because I can't say to them that the food that they are already getting at such increased prices is now going to go less. It's not. Any increase at all is a no-no for the people of South Africa, especially the poor and vulnerable people.
And Tammy, just to come back quickly on this, I mean, some people would say, well, the DA is opposed to VAT because only rich people are VATed anyway. That's going to affect the rich people. What do you say to that?
Well, I would say it's important for people to understand that VAT is the one tax in this country that does not discriminate. VAT does not care about your social status in society. VAT doesn't care about your economic status in society. VAT doesn't care about your age, your gender, or your race. VAT is something that affects all of us. So we will not only feel that 1% VAT increase over the next 2 years when we are only grocery shopping. We're going to be feeling the pinch in our pockets when we are purchasing any other goods and services. And it's important to remember that we are already experiencing food inflation of 8%. That in and of itself is economically strangling all of us, not only poor people. And if you want to add further insult to injury, let's talk about the upcoming Eskom tariff increase, which is going to be going up by 13% on the 1st of April. The reality is that South Africans can't afford another layer of unnecessary tax in an environment where we are already struggling. So the truth of the matter is that even though we've established, yes, that does affect the most vulnerable households, particularly women-led households in this country, it's going to have a ripple effect on all of us.
So I want us to shift a bit of gears here, and I want to bring you in, Mark. What does a pro-economic growth and jobs budget look like, according to the DA?
We've put forward a simple 6-point plan to get out of the situation that we're in. So the first point in our plan is to say we can't have any more taxes, be that value-added tax, personal income tax, or corporate tax. The second point in our plan is to say the tax already due to SARS should be collected a lot more efficiently. And with a small additional allocation that we fought really hard for, is SARS has indicated to us that they are able to take their compliance from 63 to 67%, and that alone will more than cover whatever might have been made from these VAT-based increases to our budget. The third point is we need to do an immediate spending cut of unnecessary things like catering for the executive class, things like advertising budgets. We saw that the Health Department was advertising a non-viable NHI scheme. Those things cost money. The fourth thing is, on top of these immediate spending cuts, we need to do a comprehensive strategic spending review to identify inefficiencies in the way we run this country and add the funds from those inefficiencies back into the fiscus. We need to also open up the economy. We need to make sure that our ports are functioning and the rails functioning. So our fifth plan is fundamental reform to how we run this place. And then the sixth thing is we can't cut at all on critical services. We can't cut frontline nurses, teachers, doctors. And within that 6-point politically neutral plan, by the way, we have the ingredients to get this economy firing again.
When the DA says investment over consumption, what do we mean?
It's a great question. We have a real problem if we are spending the vast majority of our national fiscus on servicing employees. What that practically means, and we're not saying people shouldn't be paid for what they do, but what it practically means is if we overspend and we have year-on-year above inflation increases, then we're not spending on things that we do need. For example, expanding our rail network, making sure that our roads are of such a nature that things can move through it, being able to plug electricity into the grid from private producers and the metering type systems that allow for that to happen. Unless we're investing in infrastructure for the future, which by the way in the short term creates jobs, but in the long term creates the environment for businesses to flourish. Unless we're doing that, we are consuming instead of investing in infrastructure, and it will be to our detriment, and especially in the last 15 years, from the Zuma years, it has been to our detriment.
Now, Ashro, I want to bring you in here because the DA has said no to VAT increases. So where must the money come from?
Well, firstly, the money can come from the existing baselines in the budget. So the government consolidated spending is just over 1.8 trillion rand. And if you tell me that you can't find an additional 30, 40 or 60 billion rand out of 1.8 trillion, I'll tell you that you're the worst accountant in the world. Because what we're speaking about is finding anywhere between 1.3 to 2.6% of the budget and saying, this might not be useful, let's reprioritize it. And so money can come in the short term from primarily sorting out the existing government budgets, cutting the waste. There are programs that have been in the government system since the 1970s, the 1980s, all the way to 1912 when the country was founded. There are programs that were created under the Zuma era, pet projects by ministers where people want to cut a ribbon or kiss a baby that don't have any real world impact on anyone. And there might be a lot of people working very hard at it, but it has no impact. So we've called for a comprehensive spending review to find 60 billion rand in the short run, and in the long run, find more efficiency savings. And that's the first place that you can find money. The second place is from non-compliant taxpayers, people who owe SARS money and haven't been paying their dues. I think it is very unfair on taxpayers who do pay their dues, many working people, that there are lots of people who aren't paying their dues. So we've got to raise tax compliance from 63 to 67% in the medium term as well. And that'll bring in about 60 billion a year possibly. But more importantly, we have been in this problem where government has taxed and borrowed and done hairline cuts over 10 years. And that's because they haven't grown the economy. And so in the long run, beyond the 3 years, we've got to get growth moving, and we've got to get it critically above population growth and up to over 3%, so that there is enough money in the economy. Because when you broaden the tax base, so more people are employed and more people can pay tax, you don't need to raise tax rates, because more people are productive, more people can find dignified work, and more people then pay tax. So that's where the money can be found. And it's not difficult to do these things. It's only difficult for the ANC because they've got to go and fight with their own ministers and their own premiers and so on to say to them, no, sorry, you've got to cut waste, you've got to cut money lost to corruption. And that, I suspect, is why they don't want our plans, or they want to resist them so strongly.
Sure, some very important points there, Ash, because it's clear that money can be found. And the ANC seems to not want to do that. Bags, we know that the budget speech that happened yesterday was supposed to be presented on the 19th of February, but that didn't happen.
Look, I think we mentioned this a bit earlier, but I want to make it very clear. The one thing the ANC is struggling with is for them to understand that they are no longer a majority. And it's not the DA's decision. It's the voters of South Africa that said, we choose to make sure that we've got some form of cooperation between the political parties so that you can prioritize us as South Africans. And the quicker the ANC accepts it, the better. And I want South Africans to imagine for a second. Imagine the Democratic Alliance was not in government or part of the government of national unity. Today, they would have had a 2% VAT hike. They would have a further boot on their neck at 17% worth of VAT. Things would be more expensive. And ultimately, there would not be anybody to fight for them in government. So that's why the budget did not take place when it was supposed to take place on the 19th of February. Because the DA stood on the side of South Africans. Because we vowed to rescue South Africa. And we said, there's absolutely no way that the budget is going to be about the ANC and your own corruption and your own pet projects and not about South Africans. It's not going to happen under our watch. And that is precisely why we entered government, to make sure that we are the vanguard against corruption, against more poverty, against more joblessness, against people being unsafe in South Africa, and to make sure that we push back against those things, to make sure that whatever we make and contribution that we make towards the budget is going to be rolling back to make sure the South Africans have a better life. And that is precisely why we're here. So they don't want to, they haven't accepted that they're a 39% party, and they need to accept that. And we're going to go back, even in this process, to say, get rid of the pet projects, get rid of the corruption, get rid of the ghost employees, take that money, put it towards service delivery so that the lives of South Africans are better. Take that money, make sure that we invest in infrastructure and other projects to attract investment and create jobs and growth. That's why we're here as a DA, and we will not take any step back on that. We must push back, otherwise we'll plunge South Africans into further and further poverty.
Now, Mum Bridget, it's clear the ANC has used Parliament for many years to rubber stamp its bad policies, but not this year.
Not this year. And it's very, very important and interesting that we are in a year where the ANC has lost the majority, and at the same time, they bring this hugely destructive VAT budget to the people of South Africa, because the people of South Africa are now sitting back and thinking the GNU is there, the committees are not, some of the committees have chairpersons that come from other parties that are actually going to be fighting for the people of South Africa. So the people are watching with bated breath to say, how are you then going to make good to your words when you said that we are here for growth and jobs, because people are waiting for jobs. People are saying, where I went to KwaZulu-Natal, and this young lady was saying to me, Mam Bridget, I am waiting for that job, by the way. Can I send you a CV? Here is a process. Interestingly enough, here is a process that's going to prove what happens in committees when this budget, when departmental budgets land on the table of the committees, for them to for us as members of those portfolio committees to show what it is that we came to Parliament for. Because here is an opportunity that says people voted for you to rescue South Africa for jobs and growth. Do it now. Here it is in front of you. So this, I don't know what we are going to do, get therapists or whatever to say to the ANC, you are 39%, you are not 51, you are not 52% majority in Parliament. So please wake up to that fact and do as you are supposed to do. People of South Africa are waiting. You don't want to lose more.
Now, Ashro, I mean, when we talk financial crisis in South Africa, how bad is it? I don't think people really understand where we are as a country. Can you maybe just take us through that?
Yeah, so our economy is worth about 8 trillion rand. Our government debt is over 6 trillion rand. So that's 76.2%. That's what it'll reach this year, is debt. What that means is that government can't borrow because we are in a fiscal crisis, and we can't borrow because the rates are very high, and because the markets are now saying to South Africa, if you want to take on more debts, you've got to grow the economy, so sort out your debts. And that debt stock is driving up interest rates and crowding out capital for other investments. So we're all paying higher rates because the government has borrowed 6 trillion rand worth of money. That's the first problem in terms of crisis. The second crisis is simply that because the economy hasn't grown, there simply isn't enough money that the state can take out of the economy for public services. So why are there queues at hospitals and clinics, and why are parents struggling every year for getting placements, is because there simply aren't enough of these public services. And tax is not going to solve that. As I said earlier, we can tax this year, but next year we're going to be in the same crisis again because of the crisis of growth. And so the reality is that all of these problems sit on the fact that the South African economy does not grow and does not grow quick enough. It has too much debt. There is no credible path to dealing with that debt. And every year we see debt go up and up and up and up. And think about this. In 2009, debt was about 27% of GDP. It's now 76%. Debt service costs was about 1% of the budget. It's now about 22% of the budget. So the single biggest amount of money the government will spend is going to be on debt, paying interest. It's going to be over 450 billion rand this year that is going to be used to pay debt and debt interest costs. So that tells you that we are in deep, deep trouble. And unless we rapidly move towards hard growth that creates jobs, we are not going to get out of this crisis, and it'll only get worse.
And just, Leola, just to add what Ash said, just to make it simple, it means that if South Africa has 100 rand, that's the income that we have, that's the money that we have, 76 rand of that 100 rand goes to servicing debt. And then we're left with the remainder to go and deliver all these services that we need to deliver. So the more we make sure that we clear out that debt and we make sure that our spending in the country is much more efficient, we make sure that we focus on getting rid of these ghost employees, focusing on economic growth and jobs, we are going to be able to clear that out, meaning that we've got more and more money over a long period of time to be able to deliver the services that we need to deliver. In a basic household, if we were a household, it means 76 rand of that 100 rand that we have goes away. We don't have it. We have to go service some form of debt. And I think it's important for South Africans to get that perspective in their own, from a household perspective, so that they understand why some of these services can't be delivered. And if we continue down this path, we might end up with 4 rand of money that you can use because you want to continuously tax people into debt. So we need to be careful of those things.
Ash, interestingly, we were talking about this earlier with Fikile Mbalula's tweet on X. But can you maybe just explain to us, has race-based policies also contributed to this financial crisis that we are finding ourselves in?
Well, I mean, we pay a massive BE premium in public procurement, and the IMF has estimated that we lose 1% of GDP every year to those premiums. So when I speak about BE premiums, it's not transformation. It is literally 70 billion rand of government expenditure every year is lost to tenderpreneurs who skim off the top. And they generally are politically connected elites who keep enriching themselves. But when you look at the reality of poverty in South Africa, it is very clear. People have gotten poorer. Unemployment has gone from the mid-20s in the late 2000s to the mid-30s now, which means that all of these race-based laws have not reached the people on the ground. They've just made ANC party members wealthier, and you've got to be connected and so on. Even for EPWP jobs under the ANC, what we saw in ANC-run municipalities is they demand that you take out ANC membership and do work for the party before you get even a chance at an opportunity. So these race-based laws are just a fig leaf to help the ANC enrich themselves, their members, their friends, and their families. And maybe that's why they are so resistant to moving away from those laws.
Now, maybe, Mark, just to bring you in, I mean, DA governments across the country, local governments, how are they keeping their finances in order?
Yep, the difficulty is as our fiscus becomes more constrained, meaning we don't have enough money to go around, it means that at all spheres of government, national, provincial and local, it becomes all the more difficult to provide services. We've also got a problem that Eskom is not performing as it should. And so people are making alternative arrangements, which used to be a traditional source of revenue for municipalities. They would pay into the municipality and the municipality would pay a portion of that over to Eskom. Just want to latch onto Pax's example earlier. I might frame it this way. I might say if a household combined was worth 10,000 rand, everybody took out all of their money and they said, this is what we're worth, we're willing to hand it over. Then 7,600 would have to go to some creditor somewhere, some uncle that lent you money. And even if you did that at the end of the year, you'd have to spend another 2,200 rand on paying interest to that uncle. So we are in a very desperate situation and it is affecting the local municipalities.
It does.
And Mark, maybe just to stay with you, I think many people at home who listened yesterday to the budget speech are sort of sitting back and saying, well, what happens now? What's next? Is VAT going up today? What's next?
Yeah, it's definitely a complex territory, but there are two things I want to communicate to South Africans. The first one is VAT is now only set to increase if it does so by the start of May. So it's not today. The second thing to communicate is there are a series of laws that have to be passed through Parliament that have to do with where our money goes and where we get it from and how we split it up. But even if we can't find agreement, even if a 39% party decides to go ahead with a budget that doesn't have majority support, there are guardrails built into our system, and it means that government will not come to a complete standstill. And for the next year, after a budget wasn't passed, if it wasn't passed, government would be able to continue functioning with 45% of the funds in the first 4 months and not more than 10% thereafter, and no new projects. So the highlight there for South Africans is we are not facing a cliff. We're facing a fiscal cliff, but not an operational and administrative cliff for the country. And this government will continue to function regardless of how reckless the ANC might be.
Now, talking about the unfolding days to come, I spoke to John yesterday outside of the budget speech, and this is what he had to say about that.
I'm saying to South Africans at home who entrusted us with their vote and who I promised when I went into the GNU that I would focus on economic growth and jobs, that we will not lend our vote, which we obtained through you, to any budget that doesn't have economic growth and jobs at the very heart of it. And that was the undertaking we made to you, and it's the undertaking we have stood by steadfastly over the last few days. We are happy to continue to negotiate towards finding a budget, but that better be a budget that speaks to economic growth and jobs, and not a budget that speaks to the old tired cycle of borrow, tax, spend, cut. borrow, tax, spend, cut. We need economic growth. In the last quarter, we had 0.6% economic growth. That is not good enough. We need to be growing our economy so we can lift more people out of poverty. All that's going to do is make life a lot harder for many, many more South Africans going forward. And in the absence of economic growth, that becomes a toxic mix of greater misery, greater poverty, greater unemployment, and greater suffering for many South Africans. And I cannot, and we cannot, in good conscience, sign off on a budget that we do not believe fundamentally speaks to the growth and jobs agenda in South Africa. And we hope that in the coming weeks, there can be further negotiations and we can try and find a way. But whatever way you cut and dice it, we will not lend our vote to any budget that doesn't speak to growth and jobs.
Now, we're back, and it's a really, really critical time, Ash, in regards to where we are as a country. But I just wanted to ask you, what more can we expect from the DA in this GNU?
Look, the DA entered the GNU specifically to grow the economy and create jobs. The DA finds it unconscionable that 1 in 3 people who are looking for work can't find work. We find it unconscionable that nearly 1 in 7 young people who are looking for work cannot find work. And that is what we are pushing to fix. So any kind of budget deal or agreements will have to, and what you can expect from the DA, is we'll fight tooth and nail that if we reach any agreement on any kind of budgets, it will involve the fundamental changes to the economy so that jobs can be created. For example, our ports and rails cost us 357 billion rand a year. That's R1 billion a day because we can't get goods in or out of the country. That's 5% of our GDP. Could you imagine if we make this economy 5% bigger just by fixing that? So you can expect the DA to go after the core problems in the economy and fight very hard that these core problems are fought, and we will win these battles for as long as we're in the GNU, and we will push very hard because that's why we're here. And certainly you can expect from the DA that we will not give up on the part of the people of South Africa to get better living standards, to make sure that people can live better lives that they value, and where they can find decent jobs.
Now, also, just maybe picking up from what Ashro is saying, Bax, what other reforms can we expect from the DA in Parliament, and what issues is the DA going to be championing?
Look, I think part of the things that we are proposing in Parliament, and I think our colleagues in Cabinet have also taken up, is to make sure that we devolve the powers for rail. Because for us to have an efficient rail network is very, very important in South Africa, especially for our economy. So it's important for us to be able to give those functions to government that are working. I mean, we've been wanting that for the city of Cape Town for the longest time, to make sure that, one, we're able to create a sustainable transport system in the city in itself, in the province. But more so than anything, we make sure that when rail is actually improved, the products that we need to take out of the country can quickly get to the ports that they need to get to, which is what Ashwa has spoken about now, that when we give those ports concessions, it means that those ports must be efficient to get those products out. So the more we produce, and the quicker we're able to transport those products, and the quicker they get out of the country, the more jobs we're able to create, because we'll then produce more and more of what we need to produce. The second component is also around electricity. We need to make sure that private producers are involved in the system. We did say that we need to break up Eskom. We can't rely on just one single entity to provide electricity, because which company or businesses are going to want to invest in your space if you don't have reliable electricity? And if you see in the city of Cape Town, when there are certain stages of load shedding, as an example, where we govern, we shield people from those stages of load shedding because we care about the economy and their own well-being, so that children don't have to stand under candle lights, so that businesses don't have to stop and retrench people. So it's important for us to be able to have these concessions in terms of port, rail, as well as electricity. The one other thing that I want to mention as well is that where we are in Parliament and in government, we'll make sure that the policies that we fight for around redress and economic growth and jobs are not just about benefiting, the elite and politically connected elite. It's for us to target poverty as a matrix for disadvantage.
Yes.
And that's a mistake that the ANC has made over the years. To say, well, we want to have black economic empowerment because it's going to empower black people. Well, in fact, it's going to empower the black people that are connected to the political elite and not an ordinary person that I live with in Alfred's or in Manfred. So it's important for us to make sure that whatever we fight for economic growth and jobs is precisely going to target the people that need it the most, so that we don't have high unemployment for young people and we are able to get rid of those things. So those are some of the things we're fighting against in Parliament and trying to push for.
Mark?
Well, the main thing to communicate around this budget and to latch onto what Bax has said now is that we simply do not have a revenue problem. So the ANC has been lying to South Africa, saying that we need to raise VAT because we need this gap to be filled. We don't have enough money. The government budget that's being proposed in 2025 is 3 times the size, if you adjust for inflation, the Nelson Mandela budget that they had in 1995. It's twice the size of the Mbeki budget. And those governments did far more than the ANC has been able to achieve in government for the last 10 years. So we must ask ourselves, is this really a problem of revenue, or is this a problem of expenditure? And if we agree that it's a problem of expenditure, then we need immediately a spending review. Say, where's this money going? Why are we overpaying for trains? Why are we overpaying civil servants? Why are we overpaying the executive class within that civil servant cohort? And if we can solve those problems, we won't need to be asking South Africans to pay more tax, which they cannot afford.
Now, tell me, South Africans who are sitting at home who want to back the DA's fight against this VAT budget, how can they do that?
Well, the answer is quite simple. Become an active citizen. Use the mechanisms within South Africa's democracy to actually make your voice heard. It's also important for all South Africans to understand that government, parliament, and other legislative bodies within our country don't simply operate in isolation from the rest of the citizen.
Yes.
It's really important to understand that the work stemming from government and parliament is as a result of the mandate given to them by the people, particularly the people who vote. So that's very important. And I always say to people, you may tell yourself that you are not interested in politics. But the reality is this: politics will always be interested in you, regardless of how you feel. And the decisions that politicians make at a higher level ultimately trickle down to you, whether it's in your capacity as a resident of a municipality or as a consumer. For example, it is because of political decisions that your NSFAS loan may not be approved a few months from now. It's because of political decisions that you may or may not receive adequate healthcare at your local community clinic. It's because of politics or political decisions that we are here today having this discussion on whether or not VAT is actually going to increase and the effect, the ramifications that's going to have for South Africans and industries. I also think it's important for people to start leveraging the power of civic organizations and social media platforms. That is one of the most effective ways to make your voice heard, as opposed to waiting every 5 years for an election to take place. This is how you get to hold your public representatives accountable between elections. And I think that is a very powerful tool to use. And lastly, I want to say this. In the last election, there was about 11 million South Africans who actively chose to stay at home and not vote. Those very same 11 million South Africans could have helped us bring the ANC even further down below 30%, you know? And so we have a problem in South Africa where too many people are just too happy to be mere spectators as opposed to actually getting involved in the arena. And I think there also needs to be a fundamental change in terms of participation of the general public as a whole.
Yeah, and you know, it definitely is a very critical time in the country. And before I let you guys go, I really just want a final thought from each and every one of you for people who are watching this at home. I don't think it's the time for us to lose hope. I think there's great things on the table. But what is your final thoughts for the people at home? We'll start with you, Tammy, and finish off with Ash.
Okay, so I really think that the message is clear. You can never tax any nation into prosperity. There are several case studies around the world that have shown this to be true. When the DA decides to pick a fight within the GNU, they are not picking a fight for the sake of it. Like the Minister of Finance suggested yesterday, that there might be an agenda at play. As a citizen of this country, I don't believe that to be true. I think that Our ministers who represent us within the GNU have the best interest of South Africans at heart. We have put forward a series of reforms and plans which could change South Africa's trajectory. The plans are there. All the ANC needs to do is implement them and stop getting drunk on the ideological Kool-Aid.
It's quite simple for me. There's an adult in the room. We've been in the room for 8 months now, and we're not going anywhere. We're committed to fixing this country. We've put together credible suggestions that will get us back on track for growth, that allows the economy to grow again as it once did by 5 or 6% a year within a couple of years from now. These things are not unattainable. We do need South Africans to stand behind us. We do need a bigger portion of the vote in each subsequent election coming. But South Africans should rest assured in the meantime that we will stand up for the interest. And if you're feeling most vulnerable, and if you're feeling poor and not able to make it to the end of the month, know that we've got your back.
Yes. Last year, South Africans themselves decided let democracy function the way it should have been all this time by taking away some power from the ANC. And what we are saying is that for as long as we are there, with your support, we will fight in whatever space that we are in, as in this case in Parliament, to make sure that democracy works by ensuring that we do not rubber stamp anything, by ensuring that we work for what we promised you we were going to work for, which is growth and jobs. And for that, we want you not to lose hope because the Democratic Alliance is there for you.
Bex?
I just want to say to South Africans that don't allow the ANC to manipulate you any further. The reason why we joined government is to stop precisely the things that the ANC is trying to do now, which is raise the cost of living that will affect you and me. There are other parties like the PA that are there, good, that have abandoned you because of political gain and power and perks. We're not interested in that. Our interest is to change your lives for the better so that this country can be better. And I want you to continue to trust the Democratic Alliance to do that. We're not going to buy face of anybody. We're a party of all South Africans, and it's important for you to back us to say no to VAT hikes or tax hikes, more to economic growth and jobs. That is our agenda, so that we can lift more and more South Africans out of poverty into opportunity. And anybody who tells you anything else other than that, block out that noise and watch our actions, because that's what we're interested in. Anything else, we're definitely not interested in. And I can promise you, we will continue to fight to rescue South Africa in Parliament, in government, wherever we are. We've proven that we can do this where we govern for all South Africans, to lift people out of poverty into opportunity. That's why everybody runs to where we govern, because they know that there's better opportunities. So watch us do the same thing, support us in our cause to say no to tax hikes and more to growth and jobs. And we'll make sure that we'll do everything in our power to deliver that.
Ashur, the final word?
Yeah, I just want to say very clearly and very simply that when it comes to growing the economy and getting people into jobs, the DA will not bend and we will not break. This is our focus and our mission. And everywhere the DA governs, unemployment is the lowest and living standards are the highest. But we need that for all of South Africa and for every single South African to experience. That is why we're in the GNU. That is why we're cleaning up the departments where we govern, we're cutting corruption, and we're focusing on things like opening new markets to get South African goods to countries all over the world so that more South Africans can find work in South Africa. And that is our sole mission, and we will not give up. And if it means that the ANC will tweet empty propaganda at us, take it for what it is, empty propaganda. If it means that smaller parties get upset with us that we're not going along with this budget, we're not going along with it, because we are here in the interest of South Africans. We're not in it for ourselves. And if other small parties and the ANC don't like that we are not interested in politics for the politicians, but politics for the betterment of South Africa, then that's their problem and not ours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ash. And I think the last point that you mentioned there is that the DA is in it for the betterment of South Africa. Yes. I want to thank each and every one of you as the panelists. I think it's such an important, critical time to be having this conversation. We cannot be waiting any longer. South Africa, you deserve better. We can stop these VAT hikes. We can rebuild our economy for more jobs. The DA has a unique opportunity in national government to finally root out ANC corruption, to stop job-killing policies and set our country on a path of prosperity. Leaving the country is not an option. Being an observer simply won't cut it. Let's roll up our sleeves, Mzansi, strengthen the DA's hand so that we can strengthen our country. It's all about more votes, more power for more delivery. My name is Luyolo Mpiti Khatebe Mtimkulu Bungani, signing out. Together, we can shape the future that we all deserve.
Thanks for watching. All across our beautiful country, people are joining forces to elect the new government that can rescue South Africa. Like and follow us on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Please share our videos with friends and family. Let's rescue South Africa.